You ever watch calisthenics athletes floating through handstands and think, man, how are their wrists not screaming? Here's the crazy truth. Most people are limiting their strength, destroying their form, and capping their potential simply because they're training without one of the simplest tools in the game, parallettes. And if you think parallettes are just mini push-up bars, you're about to realize you've been leaving a lot of gains on the table. But before I show you how to use them the right way, let me ask you something. Have you ever tried to do L-sits, handstand holds, or deep push-ups, and felt that weird wrist pinch, shaky balance, or that I'm about to collapse feeling? Yeah. That's the exact moment parallettes could have saved your reps. Most people think calisthenics is all about raw body weight strength, but here's the secret almost nobody talks about. The angle of your wrist changes the entire chain of your upper body. When your foundation is unstable, your shoulders compensate, your core overworks, and your entire posture collapses like a tower built on sand. That's why beginners struggle, intermediates plateau, and even advanced athletes get nagging pains. And here's the fun part. Half of the mistakes people make happen before they even do a single rep. They grip the ground wrong, they load their wrist wrong, they set their shoulders wrong, and then they wonder why every push-up feels like a fight. Parallettes fix all of that, if you actually know how to use them. But don't worry, we're not jumping into the proper technique yet. I want you to feel the difference first. So picture this, you place your hands flat on the floor, wrist bent almost 90 degrees. Now imagine that pressure happening for months, even years. Sounds rough, right? Now imagine gripping a stable bar with your wrist neutral. Suddenly your shoulders can open, your core can engage, your balance improves, and your whole body says, finally. But hold on. Before you grab parallettes and start pumping reps, there's one big mistake everyone makes when they switch. And if you don't know it, you're going to sabotage the entire point of using parallettes in the first place. I'll break that down in the next part. You ever watch calisthenics athletes holding perfect handstands or floating into L-sits and think, how are they making this look so effortless? Here's something most people never realize. It's not just their strength. It's not just their balance. A huge part of their control comes from a simple tool almost every beginner ignores, parallettes. And I'm going to say something that might sting a little. If you're training without parallettes, you might be slowing down your progress more than you think. Let me hit you with this straight. Most people are training push-ups, handstands, and core work in a way that silently destroys their wrists, drains their shoulder power, and keeps them stuck at the same level for months. But they don't notice it because it doesn't feel wrong. It just feels normal. And that's the problem. The body gets used to bad mechanics until they become invisible. So let's start with a question that might expose the truth. Have you ever tried doing a deep push-up and suddenly felt a pinch in your wrist? Or attempted a handstand and noticed your shoulders shaking way earlier than they should? Or maybe you've tried an L-sit and your hands kept slipping, your shoulders kept collapsing, or your core felt like it was firing at random. If any of this sounds familiar, congratulations. You've been training with one major disadvantage without even realizing it. Because here's the surprising part. Calisthenics athletes aren't using parallettes just because they look cool. They use them because they create a stronger, safer, and more biomechanically smart foundation for almost every pushing movement. Your wrists stay neutral, your grip stays stable, your shoulders get better leverage, and your core doesn't waste energy on micro-corrections. It actually focuses on stabilizing the right way. Think of the human body like a skyscraper. If the bottom floor wobbles even slightly, everything above it begins to sway. Now imagine doing push-ups, handstands, and planche progressions with your hands flat on the floor. Your foundation is constantly shifting because your wrists, elbows, and shoulders are compensating for the angles you're forcing them into. It's like trying to build that skyscraper on soft sand. Sure, it might stand, but how high can you really go? Now compare that to gripping parallettes. Your wrist is no longer bent back at an extreme angle. Your hand isn't sliding or adjusting. Your forearms line up with your shoulders. Everything stacks, everything locks, everything becomes more stable. And suddenly, the skyscraper has a solid, concrete foundation. This is why athletes using parallettes progress faster. They're not fighting themselves. But let me be real with you. Most people buy parallettes and immediately start training wrong. They hold them like dumbbells. They angle them the wrong way. They place them too wide or too narrow. They try to replicate their floor habits on a tool that requires a different approach. It's like getting a sports car and driving it like a bicycle. The potential is there, but the technique isn't. And before we dive into the right way to use parallettes, I want you to understand the biggest mistake people make. The one that ruins their form before they even attempt the first rep. And that mistake is thinking parallettes magically fix everything. They don't. They only amplify the mechanics you already have. If your shoulders collapse on the floor, they'll collapse on parallettes. If your core disengages on the floor, it'll disengage on parallettes too. These tools don't fix your form, they reveal it. Let me give you a small example. Picture doing a regular push-up on the ground. Many people flare their elbows out too wide, which puts the shoulder in a weak, unstable position. On the ground, this mistake doesn't feel too dramatic. Your palms flatten, your chest sinks, and your body sort of adjusts without you noticing. But on parallettes, that same mistake feels 10 times worse. Your body shakes, your depth feels off, your wrists and shoulders feel uneven, and you start thinking something is wrong with the parallettes. But the truth is, they're just exposing the cracks in your technique. This is why I don't want you jumping ahead to the correct method yet. It wouldn't even make sense right now. First, you need to understand the contrast, the difference between training with a weak foundation and training with a stable one. Because once that clicks in your mind, everything else I show you later will land twice as hard, make twice as much sense, and feel twice as natural when you test it. So let me give you one more analogy before we move on. Imagine riding a bike with slightly loose handlebars. You can still pedal, you can still move forward, you can even go fast if you really try. But every bump, every turn, every shift feels unpredictable. You're always bracing, always adjusting, always thinking, I hope this doesn't slip. That's floor training with poor wrist angles and unstable shoulder mechanics. Now imagine tightening those handlebars until they feel solid, responsive, and secure. Suddenly your steering becomes precise, your balance improves, your confidence increases. That's what parallettes do to your upper body foundation. And we haven't even talked about the advanced benefits yet. The deeper range of motion, the explosive power, the balance control, the injury prevention, the progressions towards skills like planche, handstand push-ups, and advanced L-sit variations. That's coming, but not yet. Because before we unlock all of that, we need to address the one critical adjustment everyone must make the moment they switch from floor training to parallettes. It's small, it's subtle, and most people never even think about it. But if you get it wrong, everything you do afterward will feel twice as difficult and half as effective. You ever watch calisthenics athletes hitting clean handstands or floating into L-sits and think, why does their movement look so smooth, while mine feels like a struggle? Here's the part nobody tells you. It's not just their strength or balance. A huge advantage comes from one simple tool most people overlook, parallettes. And if you're not using them yet, you might be training harder than you need to and still progressing slower. Let me ask you something. Have you ever done push-ups and felt that sharp wrist bend? Or tried a handstand and noticed your shoulders shaking before you even get stable? Or attempted an L-sit, only to feel like your hands are slipping and your core is firing randomly? That's your body screaming for better mechanics, and parallettes fix that instantly. Most people train on the floor thinking it's more natural, but the truth is, the floor forces your wrist into a harsh angle. And when your wrist collapses, your shoulders compensate, your core overworks, and suddenly the whole chain falls apart. It's like building a skyscraper on soft sand. Sure, it stands, but not for long. Now imagine gripping parallettes. Your wrist stays neutral, your forearms line up with your shoulders, your balance locks in. Suddenly your whole body stacks the way it was designed to. That's why athletes using parallettes look smoother, cleaner, and more controlled. They're not fighting their own joints. But here's the part most people get wrong. They think parallettes automatically fix their form. They don't. They amplify it. Whatever bad habits you had on the ground. The bars expose them brutally. Elbows flaring, shoulders sinking, core switching off. Everything becomes obvious. So before we get into the correct technique, before we talk about advanced benefits or skill progressions, I want you to understand this first. Parallettes aren't just tools. They're truth tellers. They show you exactly what your body is doing, good or bad. And there's one tiny adjustment, something almost invisible, that you must make when switching from floor training to parallettes. Get it wrong and every rep becomes twice as hard. Get it right and your training instantly feels smoother, stronger, and more controlled.